wanted to show you guys. We do a lot of work on this property. This area here was filled with trees, brush, bushes, thorns, vines, you name it. We cleared it out this weekend, and now we have a trail from the back of the property here, and it goes to the middle area here that we have. This was here when we moved in, a pet cemetery. The previous owner's animals were all buried here on the property. I'm gonna come back here with a weed eater and spray for the weeds to keep it clean. We don't have to go to any gym. There's none around here anyway, but I feel like Rocky IV, when he's like pulling the logs, we do that almost every weekend. We have to get this guy out of here that we cut up, cut down, as well as all of this. So we're gonna do this next weekend. She's our 14-year-old Brussels Griffon. This is Bud. He came with the property. He's 19, almost 20 years old. There's Sissy. She's 20 years old. Lived on this property for 20 years. When we moved in, we kind of acquired her. But we have heated houses. We have about 8 of them for the winter time for those cats that don't want to come in. And some of these are a little wild. Is Muscles. He comes in a lot. He sleeps in the house a lot. But when it's too hot or too cold, he comes in. Right now, he's loving the weather. So over here, here's a tree that I got a guy scheduled to come out. Look at this. Little turtle. Hey, guy, I'm not going to hurt you. This I'm not going to do by myself because I'm not a professional. See how that tree, I hate walking under it even. See how this tree has broken? And it's just teetering here. Right there. Sure, I can take a saw and cut from underneath, but I don't know how this is going to behave when I do so. So we have professionals do this stuff. I have 2 more in the back like this. Here's where we burn all the wood. We did a big burn this weekend. All right, so let's go in and film today's video for the ModRight amps. Looking forward to this one. There's Debbie. Let me turn this around. Hey, here's my wife, Debbie.
Hi.
You want to be in today's review?
You didn't give any notice.
I didn't tell her.
No.
All right. So
next time.
Maybe next time. We'll see what we can do. All right. I'm going to go ahead and film. This is right from the ModRight website, written by Dan. I saw a demand for a 100-watt MOSFET amp, biased as much into Class A as possible for the best sound. I opted against pure Class A due to inefficiency and room heating heat rejection. Monoblocks were chosen in keeping with the compact footprint common in the 9 series of products. I felt efficient use of space to be a critical factor in today's world. Chassis and aesthetics are clean and elegant but simple, reducing cost, allowing us to focus on component quality and design for the best sonics. Lastly, amber illuminated VU meters were chosen for a vintage tone aesthetic, and I believe this embodies the design concept. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I've been listening to this setup for the last several weeks from ModWright Instruments. It consists of the KWA99 monoblock amplifiers, which are 100 watt per channel into 8 ohm, 200 into 4 ohm. These are MOSFET amps. The first 15 watts of power are biased into Class A. And since I've been listening to them, I never broke 5 watts, no matter how loud I listened to in this 13 by 18 space. Now I've been powering these with the LS99 tubed preamp from ModRight. Now this tubed preamp uses a variety of tubes. For the rectifier, you can use a 5AR4 or a GZ34 or equivalents. The tube output section, you can use 6922s, 60J8, 7308s, or E88CCs. Now, the preamp comes with an external power supply that connects via umbilical cord. And when these came in, it kind of gave me a little bit of an old school flavor, old school vibe. Now, remember, these are made right here in the United States. So those of you looking for USA made, this is a video you might want to check out. When I got these, I took them out of the box and I was really impressed with the size. They're kind of compact, and I like this because as you guys know, I've said in the past, I'm no longer a fan of 100, 150 pound amplifiers. If I can't move it and lift it up by myself, then I'm not really interested in it personally. So when I took the KW99s out of the box, I was pleasantly surprised by how lightweight they were. Now, these are not as lightweight as a Class D amp, right? These have some heft to them. I don't know what the weight is. I couldn't find it on the ModRight website, but I would guess they're between 20 and 30 pounds each, but they will not break your back. Now, on the back of these amplifiers, you have an XLR input as well as an RCA input. The same goes for the preamp. You have XLR outputs and you have RCA outputs. And you also have your XLR or RCA inputs on the preamp. So it's been said that one of the best combinations in hi-fi is mating a tubed preamp with a solid state amplifier. And I've been listening to such a combination with the Nagra setup I have here. The preamp is tubed and the amp is solid state. And I think it's a beautiful combination. So I was curious how the much, much, much less expensive USA-made ModRight stack would compare. Now I also have some Class D GAN-M amps here, monoblocks from Live, and the Live preamp. Now these all vary in price. I'm going to compare these all in this video. The Nagra, you guys know it's insanely priced if you pay the retail price. You're looking at almost 100 grand for the preamp and an amp. The ModRight, I believe, comes in at around, I think the amps are retail $9,000 for the pair. You're looking at maybe $15,000. I could be up or down on there. So a lot less expensive than the Nagra. Now the Live Harmony, you're looking at $4,500 for the amps, almost $3,000 for the preamp. So you're looking at $7,000, $8,000. Where does the ModRight sit in regards to sound quality, build quality, pride of ownership, right? I tested these with the speakers I have here. I tested them with the Bucard E50s, which are beautiful speakers, as you guys may know, the Icon 12s, the Pure Audio Project Duet 15s, and I pulled out the Epos Sound, these speakers made in Poland I reviewed a while back that are made with resin and 1,200-year-old wood that has already died and fallen in the ground. They dig it up and they use these pieces to make these speakers. So I tested this with 4 speakers. Now let's just get right into it. Taking them out of the box, I found them to be really beautiful. They have kind of an aesthetic of an old school and a new school vibe, but there's something about these that just give me that old school vibe, and it was really cool. Now this is very simplistic. I also like that these have these metal toggle switches on the front of the preamp. You have your power button, you have a mute button, you have a home theater bypass switch, and there's also a phase switch. On the left of the preamp, you have you have 2 big dials on this preamp. I love big old school dials. On the left, it changes your input from XLR to RCA. And on the right, of course, is your volume control. It does come with a remote control that is more of the basic variety, but it's better than some of the basic varieties I've seen lately. It works fine. It does the volume, it does mute, and that's all I need from my listening seat. Now, when I plug these in, initially I had taken out my Nagra gear, I plugged in the ModRight, and I had my Audio Icon 12s in. Now these are big, majestic speakers. I've reviewed these. You can see the review if you missed it. My wife's favorite speakers that I've ever had in here. They are very revealing, but very organic. As I said, they can go low volume. They can knock you out of the room. Drums have impact. These are just majestic, big, heavy speakers. 120 plus pounds each, I believe. So I was listening to them with the Nagra, and what I get from that is a immersive, a little bit of a softer sound, a little bit of glow. Nagra is not bright or sharp, but it's not warm and gooey. It's kind of neutral, but with a little bit of romance added. And I don't want to say romance, really. That gives the impression of warm and mushy. It's just a beautiful sound. Pretty neutral, though. So when I put it in the ModRight, and I queued up my title playlist, because I do use that title playlist when I review gear. When I listen personally, I mostly listen to Spotify. But when I test gear, I do want to test it with higher res music and just with all kinds of music. I listen to all kinds pretty much. I have a very eclectic collection of playlists. So I started playing it from title, and the first song I put on was a Sammy Hagar song, the new song he wrote where he says Eddie Van Halen came to him in a dream And I guess it inspired him to write this song. And I think it's one of his best songs in a long time. So when I put that on and I started hearing that immediate guitar in the beginning, it was very, very clear and power. I got this sense of power, more so than from my Nagra gear, which is more a little laid back. The ModRight was pumping out the power. The bass was very clean and tight, but it was big. Drums were absolutely huge. Now, I love it when drums have impact. The Nagra, they have impact, but it's a little bit softer. This ModRight was kicking my butt with the drums, and when the power chords came in and Sammy's voice was right down the middle, I never heard a rock song sound better than the Icon 12s and the ModRight. It was absolutely energizing and jaw-dropping and just kicked my butt. And right then I said, holy cow, these are awesome amplifiers. And I was barely using 5 watts and they were just boom. But these speakers, I think they're in the 90s, 94 dB efficient maybe, due to the horn tweeter, which doesn't sound anything like a horn. It gives all the positive benefits of a horn and none of the weaknesses. But wow, that was something else. So I then switched speakers. I don't want to drag on too much with each speaker. I then put on the Pure Audio Project Duet 15 horns, and I threw on Diana Krall's Moonglow. I think that's on her Turn Up the Quiet album. And that album was recorded with almost like really close to mic vocals. So when you play songs from this album, it sounds like she's right there with you, but almost a little bit too larger than life. She's in that room. You hear those that voice that sounds like she's a smoker. I don't know if she is, but she has that voice, right? And with Moonglow and the Pure Audio Project Duet 15s, the voice was coming out into the room, which is what these speakers do well. And I was hearing no brightness whatsoever, nothing edgy or raggedy. The DAC was the Live Harmony Micro DAC, by the way, and I was using my Nagra streamer. Going back to the Nagra with Moonglow, it was a little bit softer, a little more ethereal, a little more sweeter. But the ModRight stack was making her more present in the room, and the instruments had a little bit more energy to them, so everything was really, really, really sounding real. And I know ModRight on their website, he says he designs gear to tell the truth. And at first I thought these amps were sounding warm, but that was only for the first few hours. I guess they needed some burn-in. In my experience, burn-in happens over a few hours. After I'd say 6 to 8 hours of running them in, more of the details started to become present. And I was hearing things that I heard with the Nagra, but I was hearing them with the ModRight a little more prevalent, a little more sparkly in the treble, I should say. So they were sounding really, really nice. I then brought out a pair of the EpoSound Deimos Red Millennium Black Oaks. If you guys go to my Instagram, it's at HiFi Huff Official. I posted some stuff of these over the last few days of the Black Millennium Red Oaks. I hooked them in and they sounded so much better to me than when I reviewed them. But I also changed my listening chair in this room, which is now a good 4 inches lower than the old one. And in that review for those speakers, I mentioned that they had to be raised for my chair in order to sound right. Well, here I took the feet off and they sounded better with the feet off due to my chair being lowered. But man, the bass on these is just, I think they almost need a little bit larger room than I have here. These are little speakers with a lot of bass power, but they also have this big mid-range. With the ModRight KWA99s and the LS99, I was hearing that bit of sweetness that comes from having tubes in the system. Just for fun, I switched over to the Live Harmony Preamp, and I ran them with the KWA99s. Still sounded excellent, right? Still sounded really good, but I was losing a little bit of that magic that I was hearing in the vocals and the way the instruments were presented. So I put the LS99 back in, and I put the GAN-M amps from Live in to see how the preamp did with another set of amps, because I have to be honest, the Nagra HD Pre is very picky about amps you pair with it. It really pairs the best with a Nagra amp. The Nagra preamp is kind of low gain. So if you made it with a low gain amp, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to have to turn that volume really, really high to get the sound you want. So I wanted to see how the LS99 did with those GAN-M amps. And wow, the preamp, this preamp, the LS99, may be one of the favorite products, my favorite products of this year so far. The Live Harmony DAC is my favorite DAC of this year, the micro, but this LS99 preamp was pairing well with all the other amplifiers. I paired it with the Nagra Classic. It sounded awesome. So this is a really, really, what I would say, it's kind of a special preamp. Really, really nice. I love the preamp and I love the amps, but my favorite piece is that LS99. So going back to those Red Millennium Black Oaks, I was listening to some drums. I'll put the picture of the track. It's on my title playlist. I can't remember it off the top of my head. I don't use notes or anything here. And I posted that to my Instagram as well. You can hear it. And this is a terrific track for hearing the drums and how percussion will sound on your system. With these Red Millenniums, it was so powerful and so clear and so clean, but there was a lot of oomph there. So these drums were having major, major impact. Now I switched back to the Icon 12s and I was hearing even more detail and more kick with those drums. But those little Red Millennium, those Amos Red Millennium Black Oak speakers from Epos Sound were sounding really, really good. I was spending hours listening to those with the ModRight stack. I went back to the full ModRight stack, right? I went to the LS99 and the KWA99s. And this time I put in the Bucard E50s. So with the Bucard E50s, I put on some Aisha Badru. This is Mind on Fire. I love this song because if your system is set up correctly, you will hear her voice spookily, eerily coming out of the middle of the room, into the middle of the room. And you'll hear those background vocals in the back. It just has such, the imaging of this song is so fantastic when a system is set up. And those E50s are really good at imaging. I have to say the older Bucard speakers, the S400s, they're really good too. I like them, but these E50s go up several levels in the sound stage for Bucard, in imaging for Bucard, in cleanliness for Bucard, clarity, right? But they still have fantastic bass due to that Purify woofer. Now, Bucard says these need current, right? So luckily, these KWA99s have current, and it was not even breaking a sweat driving the E50s. I was listening to that song Mind on Fire, and it was so big, so perfectly imaged in the sound stage. So going back to these speakers, right, with the Duet 15 horns, the ModRight had an aliveness, an energy, a kick, impact. The bass woke up in those woofers, but they were never bright. The E50s, I just talked about those. The Icon 12s with the ModRight, whether I was using the KWA99s or just the preamp using other amps, beautiful sound. And I heard that tube flavor injected. And I don't always hear that with modern day tubes. This gives you a bit of that old school tube sound where it fleshes out the sound, because these are kind of dense sounding amplifiers. And I don't mean warm and veiled. I mean, they just have so much body to them that anytime you play music, even old recordings, those old crappy 80 recordings I sometimes reference, like old rock CDs, you know, they were just mastered horribly, some of these albums back then. They're listenable with this ModRight because they add, I don't know if they're adding or they're telling the truth, I guess. And some other preamps might take that away or not allow the truth to be told. Maybe these are really telling the truth, and I'm hearing all of that body in the sound. Remarkable, remarkable amplifiers. Now, again, they're beautiful to look at. I love the amber glow of the VU meter. I love that I can just turn it off. I love that they're quiet in the room. I love that they don't get hot. After 3-4 hours of running them, I put my hand on it, and it's just warm. When I had other Class A amp, and I'm running them only in Class A, because I never was able to break the 15-watt barrier in this room without busting my ears open. That's another thing, low volume. These are adding that flesh and solidity to the music, even at low volume. Some amplifiers, you lose that bass richness when you're listening, you know, maybe at 1 watt at night. But these still are fleshed out and beautiful with every speaker I paired with it. Those Epos sound speakers had the biggest, most juiciest bass. I would say the Icon 12s are next with their bass, and they're so clean, and they give you what's in the recording. And if it's deep, you're going to hear it with the Icons. The Duet 15s, the bass woke up massively with these KWA99s, and they sounded more solidified and fleshed out versus more tipped up in that horn area. These horns have dramatically warmed up with more and more use, but they still sound sweet and very detailed. But my favorite combination was powering the LS99 with the KWA99s. That's what's in now, and it's hard to take them out once they're in. It's funny because I had them in, and I was listening to them for a week, and I took them out, and I put the Nagra in, and you're going to get a different sound. And when I think us as audiophiles, when we hear something different at first, we're like, ooh, it's different, so that's good, right? But give it some time. Sometimes after a few weeks, you're like, it doesn't. It's like a drug, right? Your first high is always the best. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't having that effect with the ModRight. So I left them out for a week. When I put them back in, it was the same experience all over again. I was just blown away. And I said, well, if I didn't have this Nagra gear, this would be my second choice. This is some of the coolest audio I've heard in a while. It's quality build, made in the USA, quality and looks a little old school. Tubes and solid state, in my opinion, are one of the best combinations because you're getting that tube flavor from the preamp and you're getting the power from the solid state amplification. Now remember, these are 100 watt MOSFET amps into 8 ohms, 200 watts per channel into 4 ohms. That first 15 watts will always be in Class A. And these are delivering that Class A sound, which is sparkly and detailed, but with that solidity and that oomph, that density and tremendous bass quality. The mid-range is really, really nice as well. It's just how I like it, where the voices are fully fleshed out and sound realistic. So as ModRight says on his website, Dan, he says, I build my gear to tell the truth. I think that's what's happening here. And after all this time with these, I feel that ModRight is one of the most underrated hi-fi companies there is right now. You don't have to spend exotic money to get that sound. That's what these taught me. These are in that high-end exotic level of sound, but they're in the, it's a high-end price. It's expensive. It's over $10K for the set, but you can pay the same amount and get not nearly as good of performance. So these were a knockout for me in every way. You guys know I was, due to some things that happened here with property taxes and insurance, I was going to sell my Nagra gear, and I said, well, if I get that, I'll buy these from Dan, and this will be my reference because I love them almost as much, and it wouldn't be a downgrade really, it'd be a sideways move. In audio, you can go sideways and you get something of similar quality. It's just a little different. Sometimes you upgrade and it's just a more wow experience. And sometimes, unfortunately, we get something new and we get it and we end up not liking it as much as what we had. That's part of that merry-go-round, the audiophile merry-go-round. But I loved having these here. For now, I'm keeping the Nagra gear. We're finding ways to keep it. And I think we're going to be successful in that. I want to thank you all for your comments and kind words. We're going to be okay. Debbie and I just over the weekend spent all weekend cutting trees that have fallen. Yes, I own 3 chainsaws. I have a commercial riding mower that also cost a fortune, but I bought that when we moved in. I have saws, every tool you can think of that you need out here. But sometimes when a tree falls, it's too dangerous for me to take on, and I have to call in the professionals. So some people were like, just get a chainsaw. Oh, I have 3 of them. So anyway, I don't want to start rambling. ModWright Instruments, KWA99 mono amps are absolutely fantastic products. The LS99 tube preamp is a fantastic product, and that tube preamp is one of my favorite products of the year so far that have come in. It adds that flavor to every amp I tried with it. It adds that a little bit of that density, and the detail is amazing the way it comes out. This does the 3D holographic thing. Let me touch on that. I had the Icon 12s in, and I was listening to some ambient style music. I can't remember the artist, but with this ambient music, just go to like Tidal or whatever you listen to, Koba, Spotify, and type in ambient, and you might find some ambient playlists. Sit in the dark in your chair, turn it on, and some of these tracks, you'll hear like sounds just emitting like vapors, and they're coming out, right? And this ModRight stack with the Icon 12s, we're doing that very, very well. That's a trait of the Icon 12s, but I don't hear it that clearly that often. I get it with the Nagra gear, but I don't get it with all the amplification I've tried them with. So that tells me the ModRight stack is also doing those micro details very, very well. It brings out some of that stuff. It digs in and brings it out, things that you don't always normally notice. They're there, but sometimes we don't notice it. Thanks for watching. If you thumbs up and subscribe, I thank you. That helps YouTube to recommend these videos. Leave a comment and engage. I'm going to try to answer as many as I can. I was answering comments the other day, and I was sitting in a chair for 4 hours answering comments. That takes a long time, but I had fun doing it and interacting with all of you. So thank you all. I love you all, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.